Alrighty, welcome to our season 1 finale. To end this theme that went on a lot longer than we thought it would, we brought on Lewis, aka Midnight Outrun, aka what else do you go by?
Yeah, that's about it, Luis. People call me Midnight, but that's only because of the IG. You know, they just caught on. Yeah.
So, what's your home course? Let's start with that.
Little T, because I've been driving it for thousands of hours and 15 years now. But I would say Mulholland Drive because it's close to me. That's actually where I first started going to just practice and develop my driving.
Okay, sick. Goddamn bikes. So, how'd you get into this?
Man, that's an interesting story. I'm gonna try to make it short because it's long. When I was back in 2004, 2005, I was in high school, and one of my best friends had a Eclipse GST, and he hooked that car up so well that it was one of the fastest cars in the valley. And I would go out late at night with him and his buddies racing on the street. They used to play this game called tag. So the cars were really fast. They turn off their lights. We go to like the industrial areas, and they just run around chasing each other, find one car, flash the headlights, so tag, you're it, and then run. And they're going just based on the noise. And I was just enamored with the racing scene. About a year later, the same guy, he bought an S2000, and he took me up to the crest. And he calls me up, he's like, hey, let's go to the crest. I'm like, what's that? I've been on canyons as a child, you know, with my parents, but I didn't know what the canyons were. I didn't know what toge was, none of that. And he picks me up, we go up Angeles Forest Highway from Big T, then to ACH. And as soon as we get to ACH, he's all like, I'm gonna take off my top. It's a hot day, and turn off the AC. And I'm like, why? He's all like, because that's the only way we're gonna enjoy this. I'm like, okay. And he punches it, and this was like 2006, and I was in love. A few weeks later, he calls me and tells me that his dad came up on an MR2. He bought and sold cars, that was his profession. And he said, hey, he only wants $1,000 for it. It's a 1985 Toyota MR2. I didn't know much about the cars, but I knew that they were fun. And I'm like, dude, I'll give him $800 for it. He's like, sure, come and take it. Picked up the car, and I had a Maxim at the time that was like my daily. It was a fast car, but it wasn't no race car, you know. I started driving the MR2 around town. I loved it. Such a great car. I still remember the first corner I took on that car. After I picked it up, I drove down the street called Clybourne in the valleys. It used to be like a very prominent road for us to go on and like do like drag races on. I make a right onto Victory, and the way the rear kind of just rotated, I was like, what the fuck? I loved it. So I wanted to go back to the road he took me on to, Big T and to ACH. But he was busy. He's like, oh, I can't go till the weekend. I was impatient. I'm like, nah, I want to go now. So back then we didn't have Google Maps or anything. I go to MapQuest and I type Tujunga Canyon, and it shows me Little Tujunga. And I didn't know, so I just drove up the road, and that was the first time that not only I discovered the road, but my first actual experience in a canyon with the car. And you know that corner where we like to hang out, the wildlife spot? I spun out there. My first time driving in the canyon in the car, I get to that road, that section, and I took it a little too fast, and the rear just swung. And as you know, it being a midship, instead of just spinning around, it swings you out of the road. And that was it. Ever since then, I've been hooked.
Nice. So the Maxim was your first car, the MR2 would be the second?
Yeah.
Well, what else have you owned?
Oh man, okay, so after the MR2, I got an MR2, that was an all-11, an 85. After that one, I got an MR2 Spider. It's a 2001. After that one, ever since I was in high school, my dream car was the RX-8. So after I crashed my MR2 Spider, I got an RX-8. I totaled the RX-8. I bought another MR2, an 87 MR2, and a supercharged MR2. My goal at the time was that I was going to be in my girl's car. We're going to fix it up and go cruising together. Then my kids came, so I got rid of the sports cars. I got another Maxima because I love those cars. Very nice, comfortable, and fast. Good family cars. And
What
I bought
was the VQ30?
the VQ30D.
Those could be race cars.
It was a 95, so it was the first year the VQ30D came out, and it was phenomenal. I didn't think it was a race car, but BMWs would pull up on me all the time trying to race it, and I'm like, okay. And dude, that thing won a lot of races. It didn't look like no freaking race car, but it felt like one, you know?
VQ30s are quick engines.
Yeah, dude. So I had the RX-8, I got another MR2, I got an MR2 supercharged. I didn't hold on to those for long. The kids came along, I got rid of those cars, got another Maxima, and then I got a Mazda 6, a sedan, you know, another family car for the wife. And then we split up, me and the wife split up. So I'm like, hey, I don't need a car to sit a whole family, just me and my kids. So I went and bought another RX-8. And at that time, I had taken a Canyon hiatus between 2012 and 2016. I wasn't that active. I would go and drive just to cruise, but I wasn't as active as I was before then. 2016, I got another RX-8, and I started venturing into the world again. I had a lot more free time on my hands, so that's what I was doing on my downtime when I wasn't with the kids. And unfortunately, I blew the engine in the car. But right before I did, I had bought my last Mazda 3. So that's when everyone started to really, you know, get to know me. I've been in canyons for many years, but I never really spoke to people. I stayed to myself and just my group of friends. When I had the RX-8, I started venturing out and talking to people, being more active online. The Midnight account was activated in like 2009, 2011, but I never used it. I just used it to post like racing videos between me and my friends. And when I got the RX-8, I started recording my runs and posting the videos, and my friends would share those videos with their friends. So then I started getting all these requests. So I'm like, okay. So that's kind of why I vet people when they want to follow the account, because it originally started as an exclusive thing between just the people I knew. They share it with the people they know, and as long as those people know people I know, then it's cool. And yeah, I had the Mazda 3 because the RX-8 was costing me a lot of money to drive every day. As you know, it's a very expensive car. I was daily driving it for work, you know, to pick up my kids in a whole different city and to have fun in the canyons. And I did the math, and I'm like, you know what, if I bought a daily, like a Mazda 3, it's gonna cost me way less to daily that, have the RX-8, and I'll still have money, you know, saved over. So I got the Mazda 3, and a few months later, that's when the engine blew on the RX-8. So I put it down, I was gonna fix it, and I started driving the Mazda 3, and you know, it's like, I planned on not racing it, but shit happens. You're in the canyon cruising, some guy tries to run you, and you're like, okay, let's go. And you know, and this car started doing very good against faster cars. So it kind of built a reputation, and it got to a point where I kind of just wanted to continue that reputation, you know, being like an underdog, a family eco car that could take on some powerful cars in the canyon, you know?
Trollmobile.
Yeah, I crashed that one, as you guys know, a few months ago.
And was a landmark for a little while.
Yeah. And I was just so impressed with the car's ability to perform, to be reliable. I put 120,000 miles in 3.5 years in that car.
Damn.
And I drove it hard. And to the day that I crashed it, it was still running like new. So I bought another one. And I'm actually in the market for another RX-8, so hopefully soon I'll find a Series 2. But yeah, that's about 10 cars that I've been through in the last 10, 15 years.
That's a good number though.
Yeah.
So out of all of those, what was the favorite one?
Dude, you know what? That's such a hard question. The MR2 was such a phenomenal car, and I have a very distinct fondness for it because it's midship, rear-wheel drive, and it was completely raw. No ABS, no power steering, no assist. So that car trained me. I learned so much as a driver in the canyon because of that car. Things that I never would have thought of. Weight transfer, lifting, throttle control. It was phenomenal. So the MR2 is definitely a very thrilling car to drive. So for that, it has a very special place in my heart. But the RX-8 for sure has got to be my most favorite modern car out there. You know, if I had to pick a car that had some technology and luxuries, it would definitely be the RX-8. If I had to pick a car that was raw and just made to go, you know, fast around corners, the MR2. So when I ask myself, which one do I prefer? I don't even know.
It's a toss-up?
It's a toss-up. They like teeter-totter back and forth, you know?
Gotcha. Understandable.
Yeah.
Two different cars, but same in the sense.
Yeah, I mean, both were phenomenal driver cars. Like, when you got into that car, it was all about the driving experience, period. And even newer modern cars, I don't feel like you get that from
You feel a little
of them.
disconnected.
There's a lot of disconnect, and I really miss that. And compared to a lot of the cars that are still in production, the RX-8, for its chassis and its capabilities, it's still a very competitive and capable vehicle. So I would rather have that than anything else, unless we're talking of like a newer Lotus or something, you know?
Oh, sick. So, you've obviously been going through the canyons a lot for a while, a lot longer than most of us have. What are any like changes you've seen through the years? Like any like repeating cycles, like that change but stay the same, things of that nature?
You know what? When I started going to the canyons in 2006, they were dead. They were completely dead. There was no social media back then, so people didn't really know about it. I didn't even know about Initial D. It wasn't like till 3-4 years later that I met a guy. He's like, "Oh, you go to the canyons? So you like Initial D?" I'm like, "What's that?" It's like, "How do you like the canyons and not know about Initial D?" And he gave me a DVD and I watched it. I'm like, "Oh shit, this is dope." So back then it was dead. You could be up there all night, sometimes even for long periods around the day without seeing people to run. You know, maybe just some commuters, but even then, ghost town. The repeating cycle I see is that one thing I do remember is every now and then, late at night, we'd have a group of guys with very well-tuned cars. They were obviously track drivers. They would come in their helmets and everything, and they would run the road a few times and then they'd bounce. Their philosophy was, if you're gonna come, make noise, get the hell out before anyone comes to investigate the noise. And they were fast, so I've noticed throughout the years, some of the fastest people are some of the most low pro people. You don't really know them, you don't really hear about them. They come very late, they want to get out, you know, they don't want to show their face too much. Throughout the years, especially with the advent of social media, the scene started growing. Street racing was very big in the early 2000s, and if you remember, the movie Fast and the Furious gave it more of a spotlight. So because of that, you didn't just have people who were already into cars, you had a bunch of people who knew nothing about the scene, who just saw this movie and they're like, "Oh shit, I want to do that." And we had a big problem where there was crashes, street racing happening so often that the government cracked down and started crushing cars that they caught you racing. But I remember when I had my Maxim, I'd get on the highway and look just for races late at night, and you would always find someone to race. It's rare to do that today. So that's what started driving a lot of people into the canyons. A lot of the actual drivers who wanted to still enjoy speed and the underground feel of the scene, they started going to canyons. Social media came along, and once Instagram came along, it just exploded. Because now you have people posting their activities, and now you have people watching those activities and wanting to participate in them. Not only that, with social media, we're aware of things that are happening a lot more quickly and a lot more often. So people learn about Initial D, they learn about what's going on in Japan, they learn about movies like King of the Mountain, and before you know it, it's just blown up. So now when you go up there, especially on busy nights, you'll see 10, 20 cars running it. Now, there's always been people who go up there and cruise. That's a consistency. You've always seen people who like to meet up and go for a nice canyon drive. But as far as runners, I would say that the last 2 to 3 years have been the most intensive and exciting time for the canyon running scene. Like, not just the toge scene, you know, but I mean the actual competitive scene. So yeah, the only cycles is that some people crash, they leave, you never see them again. Some people crash and they keep coming back. So it separates the boys from the men. The guys who just did it, oh, this is fun, or this is cool, or I have a nice car for this. Then, you know, they get bitten and they're like, oh shit, they're not made for it. And then you have the guys who, they are made for it. Like, they're like, this is my life. This is, you know, there's nothing else that I enjoy or would consider more of a pastime or a hobby than this. And for me, to me, it's like a way of life. You know, I think everyone should have something that they're very passionate, very good at. And for me, this is it. I'm passionate about it. I'm good at it. Unfortunately, there's no awards or compensation at the end of the day, but to me, it's you know,
it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Neat. So now we're gonna segue into a different section.
Yeah.
The second time this question gets asked, any opinions on the Mark I Focus chassis?
Mark 1 Focus.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know too much about them. I know that the Focus RS is a very capable car. The Focus ST is also very capable. They seem to be great chassis, but I don't really know much about the car to like have an opinion about it, to be honest.
Okay. Tommy, stop asking the question. All right. On chassis questions,
Yeah.
someone asked, why is the Mazda 3 superior to the 8.6? For those of you that don't know, he beats up on 8.6s a lot. It's funny. Steven's in the back flipping him off.
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think the Mazda 3 is superior to the 8.6. They both have McPherson strut front suspension. They both have a rear independent suspension. The difference is that the 8.6 has a multi-link independent, which is a truer independent suspension, and the Mazda 3 had a it's like 2 or 3 links. It wasn't really considered multi-link, but
It's like
it was
almost like a traction bar in a sense, right?
Well, this one has a torsion beam. This one's not independent rear suspension anymore. The last one was rear independent, but not multi-link.
So how was it going from like that to a torsion?
You know what? It's a lot better than I've expected. The car has proved to be very capable. It has more power than the last one, so that makes up for it. But stock for stock, I've already been able to beat my time attack times on this car compared to the other one had a Bilstein shocks, Eibach lowering springs, and on a good day had good tires. So stock, which is RE71s, this car's already beating the other one's times. I thought the lack of a rear independent suspension would affect it drastically, but Mazda knows what they're doing, man. I mean, the one thing that I'm very, that I appreciate about Mazda is that any car you get in that they make is gonna have a driver focus to it. You have their sports cars like the RX-8 and the Miatas and the RX-7s, and then you have the 3s, the 6s, the CXs. You get behind any of those, they want you as a driver to still enjoy the experience, and I can attest for it because I used to sell cars, so I've driven almost every car you can think of. And the Mazda 3 for a stock economy car, phenomenal. The GT86 obviously had us beat on suspension geometry. It's a sports car, you get in it. The whole feud with the 86s is just that coincidentally, I know a lot of people that drive 86s. So the benchmark for me to determine if they're fast or not is they have to beat the Mazda 3. Like if you have a GT86 and you can't beat a Mazda 3,
go home.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. So, but I forgive you guys. I have almost 2 decades of experience, so that's my advantage. You guys have the advantage of having a better car. But once they've developed, I've seen some of the 8.6 guys develop their skills in the last year, and once they develop their skills, yeah, they can easily beat a Mazda 3 because why shouldn't you?
It's a rear-wheel drive car. It's a front midship rear-wheel drive car, guys.
It has 200 horsepower.
That's on paper.
Not with that attitude. Take out the seat, just lean forward as you're going down the hill.
Yeah, so it's just been like a little fun little competition, like all 8.6 drivers they're like, yeah, I want to run the Mazda 3, and it's kind of been like an 8.6 versus Mazda 3 situation, but it's all for fun,
Cue that thing of the South Park people fighting, but it's like one crowd's like the 8.6, one crowd's the Mazda.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so how should the next generation, like people that are starting to drive that like want to get into the scene, how should they be guided? Or how do you think they should be guided?
You know what? That's a very good question because I have discussions with a lot of the guys in the scene about this a lot when it comes to safety. Because in the last few years, the scene has exploded, specifically with competitive driving. We've been seeing a lot of accidents. That's another thing I forgot to add. I've never seen so many accidents before. I've seen more accidents in a month than I saw in a whole year in the past at T or any.
Yeah, for a while you guys had like one every like Friday night.
Dude, it's been happening every week, and those are just the ones that we know of. So one thing that I've been using the account for, obviously it has a big following within the scene. My goal is to use it to organize and just more than anything open communication between people so that we can know who's driving, know where they're driving, share tips, support one another, and influence the younger generation positively. So there's a lot of people who they don't like reaching out to the younger kids. You know, oh, they're new, they suck, they're slow. I'm like, no, as older people, I think
Show
we
them the
have
way.
a responsibility to set a good example, to be a good influence. So I would recommend to take it slow. Please do not push the envelope until you've developed enough confidence and experience as a driver, very intimate knowledge with your car, and are very well versed with the road, because I've made a lot of mistakes myself. And one of the first crashes I ever had was pushing my car when I didn't really know my maxima. My first accident ever was on Mulholland Drive. My friend with the S2000 was, you know, he was kind of like my mentor. He was teaching me how to drive in the corners. So he told me, when it rains and you're cornering, try not to brake too much because you're going to understeer. It's better for you to stay on throttle, or, you know, to just let the power guide you through the corner. I'm like, okay. So one night when it was raining, I tried that on a corner, and my dumbass gave it more power and I understeered and crashed. And yeah, dude, it was your first crash is always the scariest. It's shocking. You don't know what's gonna happen, but then the more it happens, not that it should, you kind of get desensitized by it to where it doesn't face you. And as a father myself, I tell myself, if my kids one day enter this scene, how would I want them to go about it? And to be honest with you, I would probably be scared shitless if they entered the scene. I would. So as a parent, if your kids or anyone you know who's younger than you wants to get into driving, I would guide them into the track or autocross, you know, make them capable. And then if they still want to go and drive the canyon, then at least now they have some confidence, some experience. They know how their car reacts and at the limit, and hopefully they're responsible enough to not push the limit, you know, when it comes to being up there. 'Cause
Yeah.
I've seen deaths, I've seen tragedies, and it sucks, man.
Yeah, most definitely. Getting towards the end of it.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you've seen it over the time. You mentioned earlier we have people that'll like show up in normal, slightly modified cars. We have people that show up in race cars with plates.
Right.
So, do you think people should gravitate more towards modified street cars or more overbuilt cars that they use on the street for canyon purposes?
Man, that's a good question. I think people should gravitate towards a vehicle that, one, if they crash it, it's not gonna hurt them that much, because that's a likely chance. And two, I wouldn't start off with a modified car. I would start off with like a stock car, whether it's a sports car or just not even a sports car. A big part of this is learning the car. And I've seen throughout the years people come with modified cars, and those are people that crash because they're the kind of people who just want to make the car go faster without focusing on their abilities and their techniques. But once you've been driving long enough, the car talks to you. The car starts to tell you where it could improve. So any modifications that you make to the car should be based on that. But I would recommend not modifying it until you've learned the car well enough so that you know exactly what you need to attack to make it perform better. So start off with something slow and stock, or even if you come up there with a car that you can buy that's already fast, that's fine, because it obviously comes very well tuned from the factory. My biggest suggestion is just get to know the car. Get to know yourself. Take it easy until you build that confidence, and then modify it based on what the car needs. So if you start modifying the car and making it fast, and you're lacking driving technique, I'm sorry, it's just gonna make it worse.
Yeah. Final question. If you could build a perfect road out of all the roads in the area, what sections would it consist of?
Oh wow. So one of the reasons I like Little T a lot is because it's 11 miles and it has a little bit of everything. High speed, narrow, switchbacks, hairpins, chicanes. So the Little T to me is an amalgamation of a lot of the roads in here. When you go to GMR, I would describe the backside as switchback after switchback after switchback. If you go to Ridge, it flows very nice and smoothly. You go to Tuna, narrow, steep, and certain parts of Little T remind me of all of that. So it would definitely have to consist of the narrowness of Tuna, the smoothness of Ridge, the back and forth of GMR, but then you'd also want some high speed, wide corners like this. To this day, I think Loyalty is like a pretty good representation of all that. But it obviously it's not a fully developed course because at the end of the day, it's just a public road, But yeah, I feel like when I go to these different canyons, I always find something instinctively unique about it. Like when I go to GMR backside, steering after steering after steering. Ridge is all about smooth throttle control. Tuna, braking. Braking is the name of the game. And balls, because you go faster there. And you're gonna definitely wear out your brakes in such a short amount of time. So yeah, and then you have Tuna out of the Malibu Canyons is my favorite. Ridge is probably my favorite from the Azusa section. Angeles Crest, T. So all those roads have things that I just
Any closing thoughts?
I could talk forever, so yeah, I probably shouldn't say anything else.
Alrighty, we're gonna end it on that note. Thank you for being our season 1 finale guest.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you guys for watching this shit show. For all our 500 subscribers, thank you. Season 2 coming out soon.